With Survivor Series coming up and WWE pitting Raw, Smackdown, and NXT all against one another for brand supremacy, I was reminded of a question that my friend Stephen James asked me last year, and that was who would I pick for my all-time Survivor Series dream teams representing different wrestling promotions. So this year, with the pay-per-view approaching, I figured now would be the perfect time to make it the topic of an episode. Because today, Dave knows Survivor Series dream teams. Alright, so this episode is about my own personal selections for choosing from an all-time roster to select a 5-man Survivor Series team for several different wrestling companies. Now, these are my own choices, but feel free to leave yours down in the comments section. And while you're there, make sure that your notifications are still working so you don't miss out on any of the videos on this channel. And before we begin, I have to say that this is not as easy as it sounds, since pulling from every wrestler ever just to fill out 5 spots on a team is really hard to do. But as tentative as it might be, I think I have narrowed down my process enough to at least get my drafts in for this episode. So with that being said, let's get right into it. Let's start with World Championship Wrestling. Now, without a shadow of a doubt, the first person who goes on this team is the franchise Sting. There is no better representative for the promotion, and he really is the face of the company. So I'm just gonna go ahead and make him the team captain. Following him as the anchor, I am going to pick yet another classic WCW guy, Bill Goldberg. He may not be one of my favorites, but I do understand his place on this team. Following Goldberg, we have the wrestler who I think gave him his best match. A wrestler who is not just another former WCW champion, but he is in fact WCW's People's Champion. I'm talking about Diamond Dallas Page. Here we have a wrestler who made it big by keeping the good fight going against the NWO while Sting was on his hiatus. And with DDP representing WCW just so strongly, how could I not put him on this team? Next on the list, we have Sting's best frenemy, Lex Luger. Despite the narcissist and the Lex Express, Luger is a WCW guy through and through for me. But even if he did end up turning on WCW for WWF, it's not like turning on Sting isn't just par for the course for Luger anyway. And for the final slot on WCW's team, that's an honor that goes to Big Van Vader. Now, as I have mentioned previously, I'm a huge Vader fan, and a powerhouse like him is a great addition to have on any team. And after the way WWF treated him, it would also be nice to see him get some revenge. Okay, so now that WCW's team is out of the way, I'm sure some of you are wondering, where was Ric Flair in that equation? Well, that's simple. He's the co-captain of the next team up for consideration, the National Wrestling Alliance. That's right, while some younger fans may not distinguish all that much between the companies NWA and WCW, I definitely do. And furthermore, while I would really love to have a team choosing from all of the modern day stars of NWA Power with an all-time roster to choose from, I have to go with the legends of the National Wrestling Alliance, and I have to start with Ric Flair. Now, with Flair in the lead, I could easily just make this an all-horseman team, and don't think that thought hadn't crossed my mind. But I am gonna try and divvy things up a bit, so the other co-captain of this NWA squad would have to be, of course, Ric Flair's arch-rival, the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. So while I was tempted to make this all about the Horsemen, how could I not include one of the all-time greats? But just because I had to include Dusty, that doesn't mean that I'm not including any other Horsemen, because next up we have the Enforcer, Arn Anderson. While Flair's co-captain may not always see eye to eye with him, at least he knows there's one guy on his team that will definitely get his back. Good old AA is great muscle to have on any squadron that he's a part of, and with his partnership with Flair, we at least know that there's one part of this team that can function as a cohesive unit. But with Flair having a buddy, it only seems right that Dusty get one too, and he shall with the following wrestler, Magnum TA. Thought to be by many as a wrestler who could have been one of the biggest stars of all time if his career wasn't cut short due to injury, Magnum was being groomed by Dusty himself to be the company's next top babyface. And so if I had to get a dream team together for the NWA, I would naturally want to give Magnum TA another go in the ring. Now, as for the last spot, well, that will have to go to another staple of the company, Harley Race. Another legend in the industry, Harley Race became a huge star in the National Wrestling Alliance. While he would wrestle for other promotions, for me, I think it's easy to say where most of his best work came from. Moving on to our next promotion, the next team is going to the Extreme, and no, I'm not talking about the Hardys. I'm talking about Extreme Championship Wrestling. Now, picking a captain for ECW is not easy to do by any stretch of the imagination, as there are a lot of people who could fit this role. But if I did have to choose someone, I figure why not pick the guy who started things off by throwing down the NWA title, the ECW's franchise, Shane Douglas. Shane's reign of terror with his faction Triple Threat was a major part of the company's early days, and with all the various members that the stable had, we know Shane is capable of working with a multitude of different wrestlers under his command. So, as far as I'm concerned, Shane Douglas is the best choice to lead this team. Next up, another top player in ECW's history, the Human Suplex Machine, Taz. While Taz may be more known as a solo act, let's not forget that he has teamed up with other wrestlers in the past, particularly to take down Triple Threat. But in this case, he's gonna have to try and figure out how to work with Shane Douglas instead of against him, although he will have some old friends to help him do just that, such as Rob Van Dam. RVD is one of the first wrestlers that people think of when it comes to going to the extreme. He was easily one of the most over talents that the promotion ever saw, and you know what? He's just one of the most over wrestlers, period. He was a wonder to see in the ring, and he was innovative in a number of different ways. And he's also just like the coolest wrestler ever. But even with Mr. Pay-Per-View, this team is still not done yet, as it's time to go with another cohort of both Taz and Rob Van Dam. I'm talking about the suicidal, homicidal, genocidal Sabu. There is no question about it. If there was any wrestler who went to the extreme, it would definitely be Sabu for sure, and he's got the scars to prove it. Then lastly, rounding out the team, we have someone who definitely knows what it means to lead a squadron. And while he may not be the leader of this team, he is definitely a serious addition and a total must for Extreme Championship Wrestling. The last member of ECW's team is Raven. While he is normally used to leading his flock, today he's going to be part of a group instead. And by the way, this team was really hard to choose since I so desperately wanted to include the Dudley Boys, but there was no way I could free up 2 slots. On to our next team with Total Non-Stop Action Wrestling. So the first pick is going to be way easier since the team captain of TNA is a total no-brainer with JEFFJARRETT. As the guy who started it all, it's only fair to have Jeff Jarrett be in the captain's seat. Next would be another significant part of the company who is currently working for WWE, and that's Samoa Joe. The Samoan Bulldozer nicely serves as the anchor of this squad, and he would be a good tag partner to have to combat specific opponents like Arn Anderson and Big Van Vader, thus giving TNA a solid chance in this fight. However, if they didn't already have enough power, how about we just add a little bit more with another staple of TNA, Abyss. The monster of TNA is a legend and a rightful inductee in the Impact Hall of Fame. Then following him, and with this list narrowing down, it's getting harder and harder to choose, but I'm gonna go ahead and pick Jay Lethal. Sure, he could be right at home on a Ring of Honor team, but since I don't plan on covering them today, he's gonna go to TNA. Now, before I review my last pick for this team, I'm sure some of you are expecting me to say Kurt Angle, but I just want you to know that I much rather see wrestlers who became big stars in TNA rather than cast outside talent, which is just my own personal preference. And besides, the last spot on this team just has to go to AJ Styles. AJ was the face that ran the place in TNA, and he is also the first guy I think of when I think of Total Non-Stop Action Wrestling. And while some might think of the Phenomenal One as being more of a New Japan kind of guy, I personally think of him as Mr. TNA. But speaking of New Japan Pro Wrestling has a long history, and I will no doubt be missing out on many names, but I'm just gonna have to try and do my best on this one. Although choosing the team captain is fairly easy, since I'm just gonna go with the founding father of New Japan, Antonio Inoki. Just like with choosing TNA's captain, Inoki is an easy choice. Now, next is a wrestler who many modern fans may not have expected to be a second choice to anyone, the Rainmaker Kazuchika Okada, and I mean, do I really have to say anything else more than that? Staying in the modern era, next I have to go with the 8-time IWGP Heavyweight Champion, Hiroshi Tanahashi. The Ace of New Japan is a record setter for not just winning the most IWGP titles, but also for winning the G1 Climax 3 times. Either of these 2 accomplishments would have easily earned him a place on this team alone. Following Tanahashi with a still impressive 6 title reigns is Tatsumi Fujinami, a wrestler who is not only regarded as a legend in New Japan, but also managed to find himself in the WWE Hall of Fame as well. But we're still not done yet, because for the last spot on New Japan's team, I'm gonna choose Riki Choshu. Choshu was a major part of not only New Japan, but also All Japan as well. And on top of that, he invented the Scorpion Deathlock, so what else does a guy need to do? And now we're finally down to the last team, and as I'm sure you could guess, it's the WWE team. Now the way I see it, most of this team is pretty easy to choose. First, let's just start with the team captain. He's the guy that made the company a household name. Of course, I'm talking about the immortal Hulk Hogan. While everyone may not agree, for me, there's no other choice. And while I'm revisiting the 80s, I'm also going to re-establish the Mega Powers while I'm at it, because the next member of this team is the Macho Man, Randy Savage. Then, coming in third, moving away from the Rock and Wrestling era, let's go to the face of the Attitude Era. Stone Cold Steve Austin. Now, if you know me, you knew there was no way that he wasn't gonna make this team. But if there was another face of the Attitude Era, it would have to go to the next member of the squad, The Rock, which with these members alone is already making this team a serious force to be reckoned with. Now for the last spot, this was incredibly difficult because there are so many names I could go with here. I could choose from Bret the Hitman Hart, the Ultimate Warrior, I could even have gone with John Cena. But nope, none of that for me, because instead, I'm going with a wrestler who actually made his debut as part of a Survivor Series team, The Undertaker. And hopefully this works out a lot better for him than that time when he was on Lex Luger's All-American Survivor Series team, but let's just not talk about that. Anyway, the reason why I decided to go with The Undertaker for the final spot is A, he's awesome, B, he's a total badass partner to have, and C, he's a WWF guy, no questions asked. Well, there you have it, my picks for my dream Survivor Series teams, but who would you pick? Let me know down in the comments, and also tell me who would you choose for that Ring of Honor team that I didn't get to. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, Dave knows.